Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Aussie writers and other creatives.
Hello, and I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well, and Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, ideas, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business.
Hi Lynn, welcome back. Is this our first episode for the new year?
Yeah, it is. Hi, Rach. It's a brand new year and it's all happening in terms of work. I think I'm back in the swing of things. What about you?
Yeah, I think this is my second week back actually, and it is really busy. I was telling my husband last night, I think I've got like 6 things due this week.
I know.
And usually we compare notes on how much work we actually have due, and I think I won for the first time ever. It was like, that is a lot of work. Oh my God. But I've also been working on a new look for the Rachel's List website, which is launching at the end of January. So that's kept me really busy as well, which is kind of exciting. But I think this is the time of year, isn't it, where we look at how we want to move forward in our business and lining up new work and perhaps, looking at how we bring those sales in, which is why we have a very special guest on the podcast today for you all. And you know him very well, so I'm going to let you do the intro.
Yes, I sure do know him well because he's my husband. He's a salesperson. And I've mentioned some of his sales tactics on the pod before, but we both thought it was time to delve in a bit deeper on sales techniques. So we asked him for his thoughts. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Richard. So Richard Gray is an account executive with an international software company specializing in business transformation software. I still don't know exactly what that is, but that doesn't matter. But with more than 20 years experience in high-level sales positions, he works with large corporations and government departments to solve their problems, and usually using the software he sells. And according to his LinkedIn profile, which I had a look at when I prepared this, he's forceful and direct and bottom line orientated, which I'm sure he'll tell you all about. Welcome, Richard.
Welcome.
Hello, Rachel. Hello, Lynn. How are you?
We're so happy to, I don't think of you as forceful and direct at all. I think of you just as this amazing cook who has me over and feeds me. And
you're too kind. It's all part of the sale, Rachel. It's all part of the sale.
All part of the sale. It's going to be really hard for me to call you Richard instead of darling, but I'll work at it. So, Richard.
You could call me anything.
So Rachel and I often say that writers have a big fear of selling themselves and the hustle. Do you think sales is all about hustle?
Look, no. I think hustling's got this sort of poor reputation. We all talk about having a side hustle. I think that's okay, but if you talk about actually hustling, it conjures up for me images of Midnight Cowboy. And I'm neither. I'm not the Dustin Hoffman character in Midnight Cowboy. So I don't like to hustle. And there is, I don't know why, but there is a fear of sales. I think we actually sell ourselves all the time. We sell ourselves when we walk down the street. You sell me when you talk me into going to Bunnings. Sales is all about finding a need, hoping that you've got what they need, and then matching the two together. So I think the jokes about salespeople, how can you tell when a salesman's lying? His lips are moving. I'd like to think that that's only related to the hustling. Can I bore you with the process?
Yes, please. We'd love to hear the process.
Okay. So I think it's a very simple process, and if you follow the process, it's going to work. It always does. It has for me for 30 years. And the first thing is that you're not selling yourself at first. You're determining what your product is. The product will be your output, but it's not you, it's the output that you're creating. The second part is you find out what the clients want. If the clients want, I don't know, someone to paint their room and you're talking about writing an article for them, then there's no match. So you determine what sort of fit there is. If there's a fit, then you establish the credibility. And that would be, talking about where you've done that, the sort of work before, how good you are at doing it. And this is when you actually do sell yourself and that you sell your ability. And then, of course, at the end of it, you say, look, that's all great. Can I get the order? Which is what we call a preemptive close, and is my favourite bit of the whole sales process.
You like getting them over that final line.
It sounds like your process is like on the phone. Is that right?
It certainly has been for the past 2 years. I reckon on the phone it's easier because you get to the point a lot quicker. People don't want to sit on a Zoom call if they don't have to. Whereas if you were going out for a coffee, people may enjoy just getting out of the office. But yeah, for my sins, I've been stuck on the end of Zoom calls and phone calls for 2 years, and my ears are regretting it.
I know when I sort of was starting out freelancing a long time ago now, and this is way before, you used LinkedIn, or even, I would always cold call. I had a spreadsheet. I made lists of companies that I thought might be able to use me. And I would ring up and say, do you outsource your writing? Can I help you? Can I send you a pack of what I do and that sort of thing? And
yes.
I got quite a few clients that way. A lot of people would say, oh God, I wish we could outsource to you. We don't have the budget, or, we'll definitely keep you in mind. And some did come back. So I found it really effective, but I find in recent years, we've moved away from that, or we're scared of the phone, particularly a lot of freelancers, nervous about doing it on the phone. So they want to send letters of introduction on LinkedIn or email. That seems to be the way we go. Cold
calls are a bit hairy. Because you certainly, if you don't know the person, I suppose that's the definition of a cold call. I actually find them quite exciting because it's you're the cheetah trying to eat the gazelle sort of thing. So although maybe that's not a great image for since I said we weren't hustling.
Too late. I've got that image now.
Yeah, that's
I'm imagining you over the African plain.
That's right. The herd of wildebeest in the Serengeti. What can I say? Cold calls are never good, but you've always got to do something that introduces yourself to a new audience. What I tend to do, or what I've found has been effective, is again following a process. You determine what clients need in a particular area, and you just gave a great example. You'd go through a list of people who you felt had a similar need to some of your current clients, and that's exactly the way to go about it. You identify the targets who you think would use your services. You then go into LinkedIn or whatever system you're using, and send a very pointed. I send a very pointed introduction saying, "This is who I am. This is why I think there's a fit between us, and here's my details. And let's connect and get in touch." If they don't connect, and if they don't respond, they're not interested. What I find the sneaky way of doing it, which I don't like, is you send a note to someone saying, "Hi, I'd really like to connect to you because you're my best friend." You connect with them, and then suddenly they hit you with a sales line. And I think that's hustling, because there's no relationship, there's no established, I don't know who you are from Adam. So doing something like that is a bit, I think that's a bit sort of de trop. LinkedIn is good for finding names. I actually rely a lot on my current clients and say, who do you know in customer X who would be in a similar position to you or have the same requirements as you? So you sort of build out a sphere of influence from your current clients. And if they like you and if you're doing a good job, they should be happy to sort of forward an invitation to you.
I like that. I like kind of building your network in that way. That's great.
Yeah.
So do you think that sales is more a long-term process and all about building those relationships, even that sphere of influence that you talked about, or is it good to set up some quick wins?
Short answer is yes. When you're if I was in front of, I'm struggling now because I really want to be in front of a whiteboard with a couple of markers and, I draw a sine curve and then a cosine curve and say, look at the differences between the two and we could gabble on. Whilst you're building the long-term relationships, you need to keep the family fed. And that's when you go into the short-term wins. So I tend to look at maybe, I don't know, choose a number, 3 or 4 long-term approaches that I think is going to get me a close relationship with the client. And in the meantime, I'm looking for the short-term wins where there's a shorter investment of time. Maybe I don't need to be personally, involved in their company, but I can just deliver something quickly, meet their requirements, move on. So you need sort of a couple of those to feed yourself as you're waiting for the big relationship or the big client to drop.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And I'd love to know how you build relationships for longer term type clients that aren't going to come to fruition now, but might in a few months or even longer. I mean, as a freelancer, I know that some relationships I've built haven't actually brought me work until even 2 or 3 years later, when that person knows me really well. Is that the case in your industry too?
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, sometimes a sale that I'll be involved in can take 18 months or 2 years. And there's a lot riding on a successful sale after that. So you sort of need a couple of those. And that was the point of the, I think back to Lynne's question around the long term and the short term. You don't want to be waiting for that whale of a deal in 2 years' time and getting nothing in the bank on the hope that something happens. Hope isn't a strategy, but I use it as a strategy all the time, but it shouldn't be a strategy. Dare I say, if I go back to the process, it's all about presenting and demonstrating to people that you've got something that they need. And I don't mean you intrinsically, but the output that you do, the work that you provide is something that they could use, and you know that because other people do. It may take a while to get to them, but that's part of. No, you've just got to be calm and, unfortunately, patient. Lynne, I'll tell you, I'm a very patient man.
You are.
Okay, no, I'm not. But it does take time to establish that credibility and trust. An old mentor of mine used to say, when you can fake sincerity, you've got it made. I think we're going back to hustling, but there's something in that. It's nice to be as sincere as possible.
Yeah.
Do you think like a lot of it, or at least a part of the puzzle, comes down to likability and that sort of trust? Obviously, someone has to trust you to want to do business with you, but also they want to like you and feel like they want to actually work with you. So
wow.
How do you build that sort of bond with someone without being pushy or salesy? Is there anything you should steer clear of saying or doing?
Wow, that's such a big question. Lynne, am I likable?
I think you're likable.
I'm biased. Rachel is probably better.
Yes, well, everyone does say, why on earth to Lynne, but I don't know why. That's the forceful and direct. There you go.
That was me being forceful and direct. I was throwing that back at you.
I think you were certainly being direct. That was more subterfuge there, I think. Do people like me? It's the eternal question. Do people like? I'm going to say that by the end of the process, if you're talking to someone for 2 years, if they don't like you, they're not going to talk to you. I mean, it's as simple as that. Certainly, if it's a cold relationship, and you're saying hi, how are you, and you meet them, and they look at you and go, oh, I don't want to talk to you. Then you're just not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
In sales, there's 2 schools of thought. You mirror the person in front of you exactly, or you defiantly be your own person.
Mm-hmm. Which one are you?
I'm whatever you want me to be. No, I'm kidding. I've tried both. And if you try and mirror the other person and behave the way they behave, at some stage you're going to come a cropper. And someone's going to realise that maybe you're not a head kicker, maybe you're a nice person. And in other cases, people are just going to spot a fake. And I think that there's a great amount of wisdom out in the market, even if it may not be commercial wisdom, but people know when they're being scammed.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the first call, but certainly by the second. So I go to the defiantly my own individual. And if they don't like it, well, I'll move somewhere else.
Yeah.
No, I'll just move on. There's some clients that I will not work with because I know I'm not a good fit. They're not a good fit. Gee, I wish I could name them. And
maybe not.
No, I shan't. And it's important that you can express yourself, because there's going to be a time when they're going to ask you.
Yeah, for sure. When you sort of hone in on that sales process? Do you think it's a bit about finding those decision makers?
The one thing about sales is that there's always salespeople selling to salespeople about the methodology of sales. So there was, back in the 90s, and I miss the 90s, there was a sales methodology called the Fox. And I'm not kidding, this was, multi-million dollars, very large corporations had bought this sales process, and it was all about finding the fox in an organization. And the fox was someone who was an influencer, a mover and shaker. And once you found the fox, you would, riches would be yours. And they seriously sold this nonsense. There's going to be decision makers all up and down the line. Yes, you do need to talk to someone about to someone who's going to make a decision. Otherwise, you're just going to waste your time. There's a line in organisations that I call the Belgian line or the PAO line, that if you're stuck below that line, you're wasting your time. But if you come above that line and speak to people who can make a decision, even if the decision is to say, yes, I like you, I will put your idea up to the next level. Maybe you never get to speak to the next level, but at least you've got to someone who's made a decision. So I think it is important to know who's going to pay the bill, as it were.
Yeah.
And Lynn, who would that be for our freelancers? It would be like a content manager, or if it's a small business, it would be the CEO, I guess.
Yeah, I think sometimes that I often start with that decision maker, and it might be the marketing manager. I often, in the end, deal with their assistant or a coordinator or maybe the content manager, but you speak to a content director first. So to get that initial thing through, that's what you do. But afterwards, I think you might end up with somebody who's more process orientated, not decision orientated. But usually the person who makes a decision wants to know that you're a good choice. And if after then it just moves smoothly, they don't have to be involved. As far as you see, they might just check and you don't know. Or
editors, like I was going to say, section editors, like if you're pitching to the wrong section, you're going to the wrong decision maker, aren't you? So that's important as well.
And sometimes you have to deal with an editor, but you end up, sometimes you can get stuck at that assistant or commissioning editor who will send you the brief, but actually not be the person who makes the decision about who gets that brief. So you've got to go higher first in the instance. And I guess that's with Richard's sort of analogy, it'd be about, Richard, you probably end up doing the actual contract with all sorts of different departments, but might be, procurement or legal or whatever, but there's somebody in the core that makes a decision about whether they're going to go ahead. Would that be right?
Yes, indeed. The funny thing about this is it could be the chief operating officer of a very large organisation. In my example, I'm never going to get to speak to that person. These people report directly to the CEO of, a large bank, or they're the director general of a large government agency. They're never going to want to speak to me, and it hurts me. But I just know that that's the way it is. I want everyone to speak to me, but so really, then it's good to know who's going to make the decision. But I'm going to use a Dirty Harry quote: "You've got to know your own limitations. At some stage, you've got to let the decision go off into the ether that is the company, and just have some faith that it's going to come back." It's much as sales leaders around the world hate this. It's impossible to know and be connected to everyone who's going to be part of the decision, because you're right, Lynn, there's procurement, there's risk, there's IT systems. In my case, there's credit. There's reputational risk. There's all sorts of things. I'm never going to cover them, and they're never going to want to talk to me. But there will be one person who says, "I think we should do this," and then that will go up the line, and then somewhere up in the ivory tower, the upper echelons, someone's going to put a rubber stamp on that. We can't control that, but we can control the person. Control's a bad word. We can assist the person putting it up the line.
I think this might be a good time for me to leapfrog over Lynn's next point and go straight to follow up, and then we can tackle sales funnels next. But I just wondered, what's your process with following up, Richard? Do you have a specific process on how long you leave it, or are there any good rules to live by when we're following up?
Following up is a good idea. The amount of people who don't follow up is, I'm constantly amazed at the amount of people who don't follow up. I could give lots of examples, but I'm just going to embarrass people, so I won't. But, you know, there's the examples of someone would ring a company once and say, hi, are you interested in, you know, insert your services here? And they say, no, not really, not at the moment. And you never speak to them again. I mean, to me, that's a prospect, because they've said, no, not at the moment. If they say, oh, over my dead body, will you ever work here? Then maybe you cross them off the line. But if they say, you know, not now, or it's too expensive, wait a bit, or something, then you've got an in. So I would keep I do keep a track of all the people that I contact. And in some of them I'll put, typically it's call again in 3 months, call again in 6 months, call again in a year, or never call again. And that's how I'll keep track of who I should be reaching out to.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I do think a lot of people fail on that sort of follow-up. It's amazing how many people do.
Well, I think freelancers in particular, don't they? Like they just think
they're so easily discouraged.
Yeah, I'm never going to pitch that editor again. They thought my ideas were shit. I'm, you know, never going to go there again. And it's really, actually, that's the time to re-pitch, you know, and it's interesting.
Yeah, especially as Richard says, you sometimes get a little bit of a feedback, you know, don't have the budget at the moment, we're full of contributors. You can always come back and say, I've got some availability if you have any vacant, you know, if you'd like, would you like some new ideas or something like that? And maybe, or if they say that pitch idea doesn't hit the mark, you can actually spend a bit of time thinking of looking at their product and thinking, how could I refine a pitch and come back with a better idea?
Absolutely. But I think the take home message is always follow up. And so many freelancers don't. Richard, you were saying so many people don't follow up. And I think it's such a missed opportunity when you don't. So you're right.
Yeah. Well, they're no longer cold calls then.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of it. Even if someone says no, they've said no to you. So you can get back to them later, and you already know them, so you don't have to spend the time to investigate who they are, what they need. You've already done that.
So that's when they become a warm lead, I suppose, once you've done that initial.
Well, warmish, yeah.
Warmish, yeah. Lukewarm.
Lukewarm, that's right. Tepid.
Tepid. Love it.
So guide us through some of the things you might do in those initial stages when you're establishing a bit of a sales funnel. What sort of things would you do?
That is the eternal question, how to establish the sales funnel. Every financial year, every sales team around the world and every company say, we've got nothing in our funnel. It's the most important year in our company's history. How are we going to build it? Dare I say, you just go back to the process, you know, refer to number one. What am I good at? Who needs these skills? Or, you know, what verticals am I strong in with these skills? You identify the targets, the target companies, look at the people who you would typically sell to, and you can do this through LinkedIn or, as I mentioned before, you know, through personal introduction, and then you market to them. And as long as you market succinctly, and you're not all sort of waffly all over the place, you can be very direct. Customer X or person X at this company suggested I give you a call. I mean, that is a fantastic introduction, because it covers about 3 levels of your credibility immediately. But if you just say, I saw you on LinkedIn and thought you might want to buy something, you're never going to get anywhere. You've got to establish that credibility and the need.
Like I noticed your, you know, because I was watching something yesterday about email funnels, and the woman was saying, you know, I will subscribe to websites and then recognize that they don't have any kind of funnel set up. So no cart abandonment funnel. They don't have a funnel for, you know, if you buy a product, you then send an email with associated products, you know. So she said, that's my in to go in and say, you know, I love your website and everything, but I've noticed you don't have these funnels in place that could add up to a lot of extra dollars for you. So like you say, it's about establishing where you can plug the gaps with your own skills or services, I suppose.
Yeah, that's quite smart.
What about closing a deal? I mean, this is probably where I struggle. I mean, because I have a lot of sales prospects. They're happy to chat. Even sometimes they try and do the old pick my brain for information, but sometimes it's really hard to pin them down on actual paid work. How do you deal with that?
Well, this is when the cheater's closing in on that gazelle. And the gazelle's jumping around going, no, give me more information. No, tell me more about how I could use this, and what other pictures do you have that I could steal? I mean, use. And you want to have dinner. I like to set what I call an inflection point. I set it fairly early on in a relationship with a client, where I'll say, my purpose is to sell something to you, and your purpose is to determine whether you want it or not, or whether you think it fits your need. I'm going to do all these sorts of marvelous things, and you're going to either continue to think that it works and we go down a journey, or not. But at some point, I'm going to stop from being the friendly, let me offer you free services forever, into the we've now moved into the paid work area. And I think it's fair enough to have that conversation. When you were saying, Lynn, that people may ask for a pitch and they say, oh, well, that's interesting. Can you expand on that and send it back to us? You say, well, we're moving really close to the line where I start charging.
Yeah.
And you see what they say. And if they run a mile, they were never going to buy from you. They just wanted some ideas from you.
Interesting.
I don't think we should ever be afraid of closing. It is, in fact, we close all the time. It's a bit like we're selling all the time. We're closing all the time. You do want broccoli, don't you, Johnny? As you're feeding your child, and when they eat, you go, yes, a successful close. So we are doing it all the time. But in this case, you're setting the boundary of a relationship. I'm happy to give free time, and I can spend up to 18 months giving someone my time and effort and energy. But at some stage, I'm going to say, I need to see the colour of your money.
Yeah.
3 copies, press hard, because otherwise, neither of us are going to get where we want to be.
I like that. So it's very much about knowing where that line is and creating those boundaries, so you're not being taken for a ride or giving away your intellectual property or all this information and then running away. So where that line is. You have that in your head before you even start the process, I suppose. Yeah.
Some people have that line sort of, hello, how are you? Will you buy from me?
Yeah.
That's never going to work. Other people will spend 3 years giving and giving and giving, and the customer on the other end can't believe their luck, that they're getting all this information for free. So that's going to come down to points for style.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it, Lynn and
Yeah.
I? Lynn, I always go back to that Zoom meeting that we had where we went so far, didn't we, with that client, and did the Zoom meeting for the interiors website copy that we were going to collaborate on, and then it just all fell over.
Once we said the price.
Due to budget. Yeah. And that's now why I've got this whole client form that I send people, which forces them to put a budget down, in writing, so you can see if you're a good fit or not. It just cuts out all that time.
Yes.
Yeah. But look, we always, Richard, if you haven't listened to many of the episodes, you would you wouldn't know that
I've listened to them all, Rachel. I've listened to religiously.
That gives us warm fuzzies. Look, we ask everybody who comes on about the digital tools that they use and that they would recommend. And I know that we have something at Rachel's List. It's called a lead generation tracker, where people can track, who they're talking to, a bit like what you were mentioning. But what are the tools that you use for that purpose, and what works for you?
Yeah. I think over the 30 years that I've been doing this, I think I've used every system that there is. And every company has a different one, although they're all merging now in the industry. And they all think that their own is better than all the others. A client relationship management, a CRM system, a lead management system that you mentioned is essential, because that's where you can store all the names, all the contacts, when you called them, when you can next call them, what maybe even if you have detail, what you spoke about. and dare I say, you put their birthdays in, although that's a bit sort of hustly to send them a hi, happy birthday. Would you like to buy something? That doesn't always work in my experience. You need something to keep track of the companies and the people in them, and the details around those people. That way you can manage the frequency of contact. Something to look at the reporting lines as well. I don't know whether that would be totally required from your side of the business, but maybe the interests and objectives of the people that you're talking to. That they may have a special project or a pet project, or they may have a desire to do X. If you can recall that in your conversations with them and say, last time when we spoke 6 months ago, you mentioned this, then automatically you've shown yourself to be a sharing, caring, sincere person. And people like that. People appreciate that.
And that builds the relationship, and
it does.
Builds trust, etc. I love that.
It does.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, certainly I know, like in my experiences, the sort of things I make a note of is if somebody has they want to move into a different area where they want to move into more digital stuff, or if they're an editor, they want to move into, say, interiors versus food, or I make a note of that. And sometimes that helps. If you think, I've got this great food project, would that be a good thing to help you, and that sometimes gives you an into meeting their objectives for their career or their business objectives, which sometimes helps too.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that's important that we haven't asked you, Richard? Probably so much.
We need the whiteboard.
Yeah, that's it. But by now I would have filled the whiteboard. I would have moved on to the paper thing that that you pull the pages over and stuck a couple up on the wall and said, "Now, this is the trajectory we're going on, and I can feel you with me." No, I don't do that. My American colleagues do, but I don't. It's funny, we joke about the forceful and direct. It's not really about being forceful and direct. I think it is about relationships. You don't have to be Mr. Popular or Ms. Popular, but you have to. I think there is a need to be, if not respected, but valued for the work that you're delivering.
Yeah.
If people don't value the work that you're delivering, they won't value you. They're not going to be interested in transacting with you, and it's going to be a sort of a poor relationship or a poor experience, and you just move on. But if you can get past the transactional, stay connected and be relevant to someone, you can follow them to whichever job they go to, because you've helped them. And you've demonstrated the fact that you've helped them through, through the work in the prior company. That I think is the key thing. It's be relevant and be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it sounds like a Quaker advertisement, doesn't it?
I think there's so much in that, though. Like, definitely about following editors to other titles is a big thing for freelancers. And following clients or content managers as they go to other companies, it's huge. And I think sometimes that's a way that we lose clients, because we just don't proactively follow them to their new place of business, I suppose. So I really love that tip. And in fact, I love all your tips, Richard. So thank you very, very much for coming on the podcast and sharing all your knowledge. I think it's going to be helpful for a lot of people out there who freak out about selling themselves.
Well, I'm glad to be invited. Thank you, and I hope it is helpful. I hope it's not as selling's a beautiful art. So I hope it works for everyone.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Thank you so much for being our guest.
That's okay, Lynn.
Because that brings us to the end of the show. But thank you to everyone who's listening and sharing on social media. And if you do like the show, don't forget to leave us a rating and a review on the platform that you find your podcasts. And maybe, Richard, where can people find out more about you if they want to connect with you?
Oh, goodness.
Very quiet. He doesn't want anyone to connect with him.
Well, that's right, because I'm forceful and direct. I think anyone with an order that they'd like to place with me can find me on LinkedIn, Richard Gray. I know that there are about 200,000 of us, and I've worked with 3 Richard Greys in one company, which is very scary. But I think I will. I'll leave that up to you, ladies. I'm not quite sure how it all works.
Okay, well, we'll pop your details down in the show notes, which will be in the iTunes podcast app. So head there to find out a bit more about the episode before you listen, and also to find out where you can connect with Richard. And thank you again, Richard. It has been a really fun chat and a very insightful one as well.
Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.